listeners, this is Miss Doctor, and in this video I've actually gone to an air raid shelter where people used to live during the World War. I went there with the intention to find out how people lived, how frugal they were, what they were doing at the time, and just with the intention of learning really. And the reason why I went there, and this is in relation to my last video, is because unfortunately we live in a very, very sad time where Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022 and millions of people are fleeing their country right now as I speak. My heart goes out to these people. They are really, really horrible and heartbreaking footages are circulating on the internet about this. And I got to the point when I thought I need to prepare as well. And I made a video last week, how I prepare, how I stock up on food. I went all the way to an air raid shelter as well, to have a look and see what I can learn from these war times. I promise you I've not gone war crazy and I am not going to move into the shelter just yet. However, I want to learn, I want to be prepared, and hopefully it will never happen. But if there is a world war, or at least I am prepared and my family is prepared. And I've got my laptop here next to me and I'm going to go through the footages that I've taken in the shelter and kind of talk you guys through and tell you what I think and what I've learned and how we can all learn from this. As you go into the shelter, it's basically, the air raid shelter is a really deep tunnel and it's built in a hill area in Greater Manchester, nearby where I live. The main purpose of the shelter obviously is to shield people from bombing and any kind of torpedo and all the kind of bombs that can be thrown onto the city. It was digged into the ground in around 1940s, and I believe that about 2,000 people could actually hide there in these shelters. And they actually did about 1941 and 42 as well. There are different posters throughout the shelter, things like Hitler will not give you warnings, so you need to be ready. They obviously had to have certain tools like mask and things like that. What we can learn from it is that you need to be able to deal with a bomb. I mean, how many of us actually knows what to do if there is a bombing in the area, or how to put out a fire? Do you have a fire extinguisher, for example, in your house, or do you even know how to use it? Because a lot of the times they don't actually teach us in real life how to use the fire extinguisher because it's quite expensive, so they don't want to show you really, which is wrong, because there were cases in the past where people just simply did not know how to use a fire extinguisher or even which one to use, because different type of fire and different type of extinguisher you need to use. Sometimes you can use water, but other times you need to use sand or foam or things like that. It's good to just kind of invest maybe an hour to kind of look on YouTube to kind of learn about how to even deal with fire, and maybe even get some basic equipment into the house, which are easily available online. Let's get ready for fire, and we can just think it through. What would you do if there was a fire in the house? How would you escape? How would you take your children out and things like that? For example, I know for sure that fire regulations do not let people to have 2 doors before they get to their main entrance of the flat. I believe there can be only 1 door, and then it has to be the flat door to get out of your house. So it's maximum 2 doors you need to go through before you leave your house. So that's actually one thing that it's good to look into. In the next footage, you can see a bicycle and bedding and torches. For example, torch is actually something that some people just don't have in the house, because we kind of used to always having electricity. I'm from Hungary, and I remember in 1980s, even 90s sometimes, we didn't have electricity in the area. And I know in certain countries still they don't have it. So we actually had a torch, with this big torch that we could use. If you don't have any of those, then maybe it's good to get that sorted, or you don't have to have the big one, you know, small ones. There's this tiny little torch that I think is actually called police torch, because it's really powerful. Yeah, so have a torch in your house, for example, in case the electricity goes out. It's really interesting to think about the certain jobs that can help you in times of war as well. COVID-19 already kind of showed us that certain jobs were a little bit more important than others. We gave the title of key worker to people who were really essential and they kept the economy going. Is your job something that is really, really important in times of war, for example? Or do you know certain things that could be useful in times of war, such as do you know how to sew, for example, making basic items, clothing, or even just fixing and mending things? Do you know how to use tools or even fix basic items, you know, do a bit of a DIY? Do you know how to do this? Because if not, maybe it's a good time to learn that, because these skills are actually essential in times of war. Even just to be creative with food and being able to create simple but maybe tasty food from basic ingredients. So these skills are really, really good to have. In the shelter, there were different departments and there was a sick bay as well. I talked to my sister about it and she said, well, it's really nice to have vitamins at home because being healthy in times of war is super essential. Obviously, you don't want to be sick, your immune system might not be as strong at this time, and having basic vitamins as well, such as vitamin C, vitamin D, is really good to have. She also pointed out that having these vitamins in spray form or liquid form is actually even better, because tablets can actually pile up in your system and could cause issues over the years. It's good to kind of find out about the basic vitamins that you could use, because I know that certain vitamins can never be overdosed, but others could be. So it's good to know about these things. Another thing that I noticed in the shelter, that there was a quiet area and there was a poster saying consider others. And what just came to my mind as well is that we're living in this really busy lifestyle. COVID already showed us that slowing down is really good for us, and having quiet time and even meditation and just thinking things through, living for the moment, is just super important, and it's really crucial for our well-being and our mental state. Especially in wartime, our mental state essentially save our life and our family's life, and just comfort others as well. Quiet times can mean a massive difference in our mental state. So I think this is a great time to reflect and just think about what are important in life. Those little tiny things, being with your family and being present, are probably the most essential things in life. There were obviously toilet areas as well in the shelter, and they were very basic, just a toilet. But one thing I noticed, and it kind of made me giggle, is that instead of toilet paper, there were small newspaper pieces there. And I just remembered when we had COVID-19, people are stocking up on toilet papers. And I just thought that was so hilarious and ridiculous that people, the first thing that comes to their mind, to stock up on toilet papers. It's one thing to kind of have enough in the house, but stocking up on that, I think is ridiculous. I mean, look at in wartime, they actually used newspaper. I mean, I'm not saying that you should use newspaper on a daily basis, but if worst comes to worst, you can find solution for that. I mean, it's not priority to stock up on toilet papers. It's definitely not. There was a nursing area where the injured was treated. It just came to my mind how I deal with similar situations when my kids fall and they get wounded and they've got all sorts of huge bruises on their body because they're falling all the time. Then I just roll out my first aid kit, and my name is obviously Miss Doctor, so I just kind of live by that. I joke about it as well, because as I said, I just roll out my kit and I have several first aid kits in the house. The question is, do you have any first aid kit? Do you have basic things? And I'm not just talking about plaster, even just simple stuff like scissors, if you need to grab one really quickly. Do you have that? Have you got tape? Have you got other first aid kits? I remember, for example, when my daughter broke her arm, I actually put it in like a small cast, and that was really great. And when we took her to the emergency department, they were impressed with it, and she stopped crying immediately because it was put in place. Obviously, it hurt her still, but it was in a good form. You know, first aid kit is just as important as having the torch, to be able to deal with fire, to be able to do basic skills as well. So there is so much to learn from a war situation. And I said it before and I'm going to say that again. I really hope we're not going to have a world war. And my heart goes out to Ukrainians, and there is already a war over there. But guys, we need to be prepared. We need to have certain skills. We need to have basic equipment at home, and you need to have that too. So let's just carry on and learn from the war. So we are in the kitchen area and they're talking about sugar, and I know that sugar was rationed at the time, and they encouraged people to grow their own food. I mean, it's really great, especially if you have a garden. If you don't have garden, you can still probably do it on a small balcony, on things like that, but growing your own food can actually teach you so many other lessons as well. I remember just even when I was learning about mindfulness and also how to believe in yourself and believe in the invisible. If you grow a seed, first it's just a seed and it's going to be underground, but you need to water it every single day and believe in it. Believe that it's going to grow. Eventually it's going to have the fruit of your labor. About this, that's all I want to say, is that growing your own food, it might be something that you want to look into. And of course, I already talked about how to stock up on food. What are the certain items that can last for even years or several months? And it's not just canned food, frozen food. There's a whole video about it, so I will put the link in the description about that. At the end of the shelter, there was a poster about rationing. In the 1940s and all the way till like 1942 and maybe even later, they were rationing food, and the first thing they started rationing was things like bacon, oil and butter and sugar and coffee and things like that. And people had a ration book. There were also food stamps as well in certain areas in the world. Basically, people were calorie counting. And as I was going around the shelter, I overheard a conversation of another visitor, and they were saying that, oh, wartime was at least a time when people were counting calories. They were a lot more healthier than now, where people maybe even consume double of their calorie intake that they're supposed to consume, which is obviously not very healthy. Your heart works harder and everything just works harder, puts a lot of strain on your body. Rationing might be something that you already want to start, and not just because of the war, also because of your health. And don't forget, we're trying to learn from the war here. They rationed because there was obviously food shortage, but it was also healthy for them as well. There was a very interesting poster about national savings, and they were encouraging people to save, so don't spend all their money on themselves and give to charity, obviously, for the war that is going on. They encouraged people, and I'm going to read this little bit. As financing the war and controlling inflation became increasingly difficult, the public was asked to save part of their earnings to invest in national savings. People were asked to spend less on themselves and lend more to the country. There is a huge lesson in this. Living below your means. As your salary comes in, think about the savings immediately. Put some of your money into savings immediately and live from the rest. I'm not saying that your savings should completely go for charity. Saving, either in a savings account or even investing, is definitely really beneficial, because as the years go by, and trust me, years are going by very quickly, you have something to show for those years, and you have something to show for your hard work. National saving is one of the things that we can learn from war. The next poster as well, it just says save, save, save for salvage. And this poster is actually talking about saving pretty much anything, not over consuming and throwing things away and being just very negligent about things. Even just like small jars. At this point, actually, children chipped in as well. And they were going from house to houses to collect metal and collect all sorts they could later use for maybe weapons and different equipment and things like that. Before you throw anything out, I always say check before you throw it out, partly because you might be able to sell it online, or might be able to give it away, someone else can enjoy it, or you might be able to salvage it and reuse it. There was also another poster about health hints, and I would love to actually read this out to you. If you can't read the whole thing, then listen out now. Wash all over if possible before going to the shelter. Change all underclothes before going to the shelter. They need airing after daytime wear. Germs of many diseases enter through the mouth, and try always wash your hands before you handle food. Obviously these are basic health hints, but they are really important because diseases are going around, especially at this time, but just general health. Start with hygiene. Remove all bedding, keep the ventilation open, don't have litter around. So these are basic health tips that unfortunately I have to say a lot of people neglect these days, and I really don't want to say, but war could bring this back. And as I said, I'm not hoping for war here. Keep yourself clean, keep your surrounding clean, keep out diseases, be proud of your surrounding being clean, and of course teach your children as well. This particular shelter in Greater Manchester was closed down in 1942. First it was accommodated at least 2,000 people, later it reduced to as little as 50 people, and eventually they turned it into a museum when this part of Britain wasn't under attack anymore. I think being frugal is not about, being really small-minded or anything like that. It's about being savvy and appreciating the little things you have in life, not always getting more and more and more clutter. Really, that will also clutter your mind eventually. I'm a big believer of minimalist lifestyle, and of course whatever you want though, and whatever makes you happy and means something to you, you certainly need to get it. Minimalism is not about depriving yourself, but at the same time it's not about overconsumption. And certainly just make use of everything that you have. That will create clear mind, clear surrounding, and clear body, and clear life. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. And if you did, just make sure you subscribe and give me a like as well. And if you want to watch that video where I talk about food storage and how to stock up and prepare for the war, I will link it below and you can check it out. Thanks so much for being here, and see you next time. Bye.